Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to lesson 99 of this RTS tutorial series. In this video, we will set it up so that our enemy AI needs to have the correct resources to build the training post. So this means we'll be checking and reducing our enemy resources. That said, this series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors like Enemy Games. And all of that said, fire up your editor and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the editor, and in today's video we're going to set it up so that when our enemy AI wants to build a training post, we check the resources that the AI has and make sure it has enough, and if it does, that we'll reduce those resources. But before we do that, there's a small error that I want to take care of from the previous section. And if we go over to our training post, and let's train a new unit, we will get an error if we stop right now. I'm just going to speed this up. We can't see it unless I wait about 5 minutes of just going through this, but the fear timer actually, or the fear setting, is working. Despite this error we're getting a read none on our fear timers, and that error is relatively simple to resolve, and it's due to something relatively, well, it's not easy to see at first. So all these are working. In our set fear timers, we have a call to the unit ref here. Well, we've set our unit ref right here on our event begin, or on our event possessed. We start our checks on the set status off our event begin play. And it just so happens that our event begin play is firing before our event possessed. So if we just set our status here after we've possessed the unit, then that error won't occur. And if you speed up the clock, the setting of the timers will reset, and thus we won't have that issue. Now, the reason why we don't get it earlier is these units are already in there, so we don't have an event begin play to worry about. And again, we'd have to wait a while to see that the fact this is actually going up. But if we exit out, you notice we don't get errors that time. Alright, so that takes care of our little error from last time, so we're just going to save everything real quick, which for some reason didn't seem to save, so I'm just going to save that way. Now, let's take care of our enemy. Now, we're going to reuse our check on resources and reduce resources. So, because we're going to reuse it, the easiest way to take care of that is to set the functions in our enemy pawn. So, let's close everything we don't need. And in our enemy pawn, I just realized there's something in my prep pile I skipped that I wanted to do. I'll do it in this video. In our enemy pawn, we're going to create two new functions. And let's just create a function, one called check resource costs. Now, unlike our player, we're not going to have a construction master, we're not going to have a preview master, so we have to get the information to here a different way. We're going to pass in information. We're going to pass in building data, and we're going to make this an input to our RTS BuildingMaster. And in here, well, this part's going to be the same as our player pretty much. We're going to get our, if I can put that back where it was, we're going to get our wood cost, and we're going to take from our wood cost, or from our current wood resources, we're not take from, we're going to check. Sorry, I'm misspeaking. We're going to check, do we have at least or more than the cost that we need? And then we're also going to do one more check, and we're going to get our ore cost for that. And again, we're going to take our ore resource here, and we're just going to duplicate that down here. There we go. And I might want to rename this check resource cost, or check building resource cost, because our units will have a different one. But we'll tackle that when we get to building units. And we'll put a return node in. And we want both of these to be true. So we'll use an AND. And we'll plug that into there. Or just rename this return value as has enough resources. Alright, so that's the first one we want to do. And again, we're not going over the details of what's going on here. I mean, we will talk about this in more detail in a little bit. We're not going over these details because these are things we've already done. The next function we need is our reduce resources building. Funny part was in my prep file, I actually had the building in this one. Again, we're going to need information where this is coming from, and that's going to, again, be our building. And again, we're going to get our wood cost. And this time, you want to reduce from our wood resources in the enemy AI the cost of the wood for that particular building. We're going to set our wood resource at that point to the return of this equation. So just pull this down here, line those up, and we're going to get our ore cost as well. And we're going to take from our current ore this cost of the ore that we have. So let's get our ore resource. And again, we'll subtract from our ore resource, not decrement, sorry. We'll subtract float from our ore resource, and we will set our ore resource to, I'm having a hard time getting things onto the screen today, to the return of this equation. And then we'll do our return. And this one we have no information to pass out. We have no return value. So we're just going to save that. Now, let's just pop open our BT enemy base, so our behavior tree. And we're going to set a new task here, which will check and reduce the enemy resources. So we're going to create a new task. That'll be our blueprint base for a task. Let's go back here, rename this as BTT, check, and just so it's clear, reduce enemy resources. And we'll move this into our tasks. Again, I might add the word building into there later on. And I'm just going to drag off of here, type in BTT, check, and reduce. And we'll just give it a shorter name. Check, ampersand, reduce resources. And I'm just going to rename this as construct trace spawn building, because the construction happens in our enemy pawn. Alright, we're going to go into our check and reduce resources, and we're going to do an event receive. Hey, I got it right. Execute AI. Alright, so in our event execute receive AI, we're going to do our usual smart cast, and this will be to our enemy pawn. So cast to enemy pawn. As you know, convert to pure. Create a variable from that, and that'll be our enemy pawn ref. Put that into category for references, and then check is valid. Again, we've done this plenty of times by now that you should be very familiar with that entire setup. Okay, so we're going to create a new function. We're going to do this inside of our, we're not inside of our graph. We're just actually going to create it and not collapse it down. And I didn't name this in my test file because it was a test idea I had after I got it working. So I need to think of a name for this real quick, which is going to be set building type. There we go. That works for me. And this will have one return value. And this return value, if you remember our main UI, when we click buttons, it sets a class value that we pass through elsewhere for our spawning in. We're going to do something similar here. We're going to return our building class here. And so we want our RTS BuildingMaster BP, but instead of the object reference, we want the class reference. In fact, we're going to have a few of these later on, but we're only going to have one for now. But we need a couple of things to make this work, which is why I've broken it. So first thing I'm going to do is create a variable called state, which will be our blackboard key selector. And this will be, of course, in our blackboard key folder. We're going to get this. We're going to return or get value as enum. And then we're going to have a enemy states enum, which we'll just put into an enums folder. And this will, of course, based on the name, be our enemy states. If we drag off this execute pin, we'll do switch on enemy states. And what we're going to do is we're going to plug that into there. It'll convert it over for us. And on needs training post, we plug in this return. And we're going to set this to training post, so that this will return the type of building we need. So our previous functions with this building here and this class of our building are going to work together. Now there's going to be something that bridges them. Just like with our normal construction, when we click in the UI, it sets this. It then, let's just pop open our UI so we can see what I'm talking about. So our main game UI. Oops, sorry about that. Let's just get to the main graph there. It's these buttons here. We're setting in our construction preview reference a reference to the type of building we want. So if you go to our construction preview ref, so there's our construction preview. Let's setting the data over, sorry. It's this right here. We spawn in a building at an empty transformation based on all of this data. We're gonna do something very similar, except for we have to be slightly circumvent about it, and I'll show you why with our transformation. And there are some other little changes we'll have to make to get this to work correctly. So back to our event graph, let's drag in our new set building type and plug that into there, put a reroute in, and I'm just gonna make sure that I grab the reroute when I do this time. We're gonna collapse this down to a macro, and this will be our reference casts. This will be our execute pane, our enemy pawn, and our then. And I really don't need to clean these up, but we're going to anyway. Oops, there we go. Now that we've done that, what we need to do is, well, we need to spawn in that building. So we're gonna do a spawn. Not sure what just happened there. So the next thing we need to do is we need to spawn in actor from class. And well, we have the class information right here, so we're going to plug that in, and we see we have all these things here. Now, we might need to change the player again. We're going to start with AI1. We'll start with under control, and we'll leave that as is. Always spawn, ignore collisions. Again, we might need to change that up a bit, but we'll talk about that if we run into some errors. We're going to promote this to a variable, and this will be our temp building ref. Now, I'm not doing this in a function, I'm doing this with a local variable because we need to destroy this, and I've run into so many issues trying to destroy this. I need to thank Chika about Chikawawa in my community for giving me an idea on how to handle it. And we're just going to put this into our references. So, we can't actually just delete, or we can't just do destroy actor. This will not work. Even if we put this into the parent or child and call it up, this simply does not work. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to set lifespan. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the lifespan of this temp building. And we don't want it to be set to 0 seconds. We don't want it to die instantly. We need it long enough to harvest information from it. So I have found that half a second is more than enough time. It probably can be even shorter, but if you're running into an issue, try increasing the time. The next thing we need to do is we need to check, or actually we need to get our enemy pawn, and we need to check our resource costs there. And the building type, well, we now have a reference to a building, so we're going to pass that information in. So that's why we have this variable. So in the half second it has, we go through all these steps we're about to do. So we spawn it in, or actually we get the building type from our state, we spawn it in, we create a reference to it, we give that actor half a second to live before we destroy it. In that half second, we check, does our enemy pawn have enough resources? And we do a branch here. If this is false, we're going to finish execute, and we're not going to return successful. We failed out of this sequence. Now, we could technically put the check, and it's giving me an error because there's no spawn transformation here. We'll take care of that in a minute. Technically, we could do a check in here as a service, but we don't need to check constantly. We just need to check once. And yeah, I guess we could do that as a service too, and then have it fail out of itself, but I just like having this in here, so it's a little bit of a polymorphic function. We're then going to reduce, or polymorphic task. Again, we're then going to take our enemy pawn. We are going to reduce resources. Again, if this is true, if we have enough resources, we will reduce resources from our temp building. And then once that's done, well, we're going to finish execute. So I'm just going to Control W that over. But this time we will be successful. Now we need to give this a transformation. So let's just do a promote to a variable. So we have an empty transformation. And let's test this out. So let's hit play. All right, well, it spawned in a building. Interesting. I'm just hoping. Okay, yeah, we had a whole bunch of errors. It's kind of what I was expecting, but hang on. I skipped a very important step. That wasn't the error I was expecting. We need to expose that. And let's go back here and set our state to state. And now let's test it. Okay. Oh, interesting. We're still getting that error. All right. I know it's causing that error, but I was hopeful we're getting two errors. And the error with our transformation we'll take care of later. If you haven't worked out why I said there might be an error if we hit play again, that's 0, 0, 0. So what we need to do is actually go back to some stuff we did earlier. We need to go into here for a moment, into our service. And at the start of our service, we need to change this false and this true. So we'll leave these in just for references, but we're going to take all of this information here. We're going to just plug that into there. We're going to change this to normal and then plug that into there. Grab these nodes, duplicate them down here, plug that into there, and plug all of these back into the false. And we're going to go back into here. We're going to go into our spawn building task. And this is the part I want to change up in the... I didn't change up in the preview that I wanted to change up. In terms of we're going to do this inside of somewhere else as well. But... also, I should have a finish execute at the end of this too. So I've skipped a step in the last video. But I'm going to do the same sort of thing. I'm actually going to take our enum here. We're going to set this to normal. And because it's a slightly different name, I can't just paste the other one in. We're going to set blackboard value as enum. So I type in blackboard key, I think. Plug our enum output into that input there. And there we go. And then we're going to take this finish execute and we're going to paste this over here. Okay. Now let's test it. Well, you see it's deleted the building, but it hasn't actually spawned one in. And that is a bit... well, that is a different error than what I was expecting. I'm just going to do that real quick. Now, let's wait for our AI to move. There we go. So what's disturbing about this is it's actually spawning in multiple buildings. So let's go back to our check resources and let's just quickly change this to player. We're going to change it again in a moment, but the other interesting part is it isn't spawning in a second building. Okay, so we're not going to leave it on player. We're going to go to our enums. We're going to find our teams. And we're going to add in a dummy team called preview. This is another reason sometimes they have blanks in here. So if we go back into our check resources, we're going to set this. We're going to refresh this first off. So I know I clicked the wrong thing, but just like refreshing. We're going to go to preview. There we go. So now that we set that preview, let's just test it, make sure it's still working. It's a bit concerning that it hasn't deleted it either. All right, so it isn't spawning in the correct building, which is leading me to feel like this is somehow wrong. So So let's check our wood. Well, there's our issue. We don't have enough wood resources. So we're gonna actually up this to 1,000. There we go. Now if we hit play, there we go, if one spawn in. That's why it was spawning in multiple, and then we have the one it wants. Okay, so let's go back to the big window and take a look at that. It spawns one in, it deletes it, it spawns one in over here. Now, what we need to do is, well, it's spawning in a spot where we don't want to see it. And we can get around this on the player because it happens in one tick. It happens fairly quickly. So there's a couple of ways we can try to handle this, if I can find the right thing. All right, we can set this to 0.2 and see if that works. See if it's fast enough. That's still pretty obvious. So, and also that worked at 0.2. So what we're gonna do on our transform is we're gonna open this up and we're gonna set our location to -600. Now if we hit play, it spawned one in, we just can't see it, it's well below the map. And there we go. Now remember, when I hit training post here, it actually spawns one in temporarily at 000. We just can't see it. Leave that there. And our new guy doesn't go to it. Our engineers will go to the correct ones. Now the other thing I want to take care of is, well, yes, we want to update our buildings here, but we also want to do it somewhere else. Let's go to our BuildingMaster real quick. Let's pop open our BuildingMaster. Go back to our event graph. And we have our construction stuff all the way over here, or repair at least. Our construction is up here, sorry, on the event tick. At the very end of this event tick, we update the building information for the player. Well, we're going to break that. We are going to just grab all these nodes and just move them here for a moment. What we're going to do is we are going to just move everything over. This is common to all buildings, so I can drag that over this. We are going to check, is this building controlled by the AI? And we're going to do a branch. We're just going to put that into there. Well, I guess I needed a little bit more room than I thought I was going to. All right. Plug that into the, not sure why that broke. Plug that into there. I'm just gonna move this up so I can give myself a bit of room to play with. There we go. Line those up. And we need to do the same for our enemy AI. Sorry, I just want this one out of that area. So we'll update for our player, and it actually is on the wrong one. So we're gonna break that. Move this down to the true, or false, I mean, because this is when we're not controlled by the AI, we're controlled by the player. So for this one, we're gonna do something very similar to what we did in the unit. Well, we're gonna look for the correct AI to send the information to. So we're going to get all actors of class. And I really think this should be on a timer. So in the future, I will update this probably to a timer, just because of things like this. We'll do our enemy pawn. We're actually going to collapse that to a function and update enemy AI. All right, let's pop that open. We are going to do a for each with break, because we only want the controller. Again, if you have multiple AIs, we only want the one that actually owns this building. So we're going to get from here the team. We're going to check this one as being equal to the one we're passing in. Plug that into there. We'll do a branch. Sorry, I'm just thinking about where I'm doing this. You know what? We're actually going to do it exactly the same way we did it with our enemy AI. We're going to take all of this. We're going to cut it. We're going to delete this node. Delete that as well. And we're going to go into our reference cast here. And after we get our player controller information, because we still need that to move the HUD around, or not the HUD, the information regarding the health of the building. We're going to pull off of here, and we're going to create a new variable, which will be our enemy pawn ref. This will go into our references. I didn't copy the... Sorry, we actually still need that branch from earlier as well. So we're going to do a branch. This is what I get for doing things in the video that I didn't do in the prep file. I completely skipped this step in the prep file, despite telling myself before recording I was going to do this. So if this is true, that we're controlled by the AI, we'll do all this. If we find the one we want, we'll break right then. And just plug those into there so we have a bit more of a clear visual of what is going on here. There we go. Plug that into there. All right. Off of false, we'll plug the HUD information into there, so we can't create a HUD for the player to look at. And we'll also update our HUD a bit more, just like we did with our unit. We'll put that down there. And we have no AI to cast to, so off completed. We'll come off into the output there. Let's go back to our main graph here. And at the end, all we're going to do is we're going to get our enemy pawn ref. From here, we are going to update or set all buildings so we can remove it from the under construction list. Remember, the building gets added to the construction list in our task. So we add it here because we've just spawned it in and we update our buildings. Well, it knows that it has something under construction. That's a training post. And because this will be used elsewhere, we'll also pull off of this and update our set resource max, or no, not reduce. Set resource max. Probably should be resources. And I probably should have used the same naming convention I did in the player controller, a set max resource. But, whoops. Alright, so there's our setup for that. Now, the other thing I want to take care of is the HUD, or the UI. And I want to make sure of one more thing. And let's just move this a little bit that way, and because that's going to drive me crazy now that I've seen it. There we go. And is not controlled by AI. Sorry, I don't need to have the is in there. Just need the not. Not controlled by AI. Alright. So if we hit play now, we spawned in the buildings. We can't open that up. We can open that one up. Again, we'll take care of where it's spawning in later on when we take care of all the buildings. It's now going to move up to the training post to construct it. I can't actually open it up now, so you can't see how fast it's constructing. But you see it's finished. It's now going back in to do its repairs. It's finished its repairs, so hopefully we'll see the unit return in a moment. Oh, there it is. Hello, unit. And it's trying to find things to do. So we'll also have to take care of that as well for the AI, but we'll take care of that later in this series. So we have an access to try to... Oh. Give me 1 second. That error should not have showed up. Alright. Now let's make sure it shows up. Really? Interesting. Oh, we need to make one more change. In our GetUnit function, we're going to just break that for a second. Sorry, again, not having done this in my prep file, I did not know about that coming up. We're going to put a branch in, mostly because I forgot we had this in here. And off the false, we'll plug into there. And this will be is controlled by AI. That should resolve the issue. So what was going on was as a unit entered the building, they're trying to update the HUD. Well, the HUD doesn't exist for the enemy AI. So if we exit out, no, we're still getting that error. Release single occupant. So any build, okay, we need to do that for the single occupant probably, and for the all occupants. So let's just find the release single occupant. So get unit, we've done release all occupants. No, we don't have any call there that we need to worry about. So it's going to be in the single occupant only. There we go. We'll do our branch there. In fact, we're going to go back to our release or get unit and put our return node in the correct spot and put this on the false. Let's go back to our get unit. We'll return on that as well. And clear occupant list. Let's just make sure that, again, it doesn't try to update the wrong one. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of these little things we're going to have to clean up, and because I didn't do the prep file with this in it, I kind of forgot about this. And then we're going to have a return there. All right, now let's test that one final time and make sure it works. God, that's going to annoy me until we fix it. We can't open them, but we can open this one. It's gone in there. It's finished construction. It's gone back into repair. I'm trying to open it still, even though I know I can't. And it's finished its repairs. It's now kind of just going, I'm trying to do stuff. I've arrived to what I'm trying to do, but there's nothing for me to do, which is eating up a bit of resources. But again, we'll take care of that down the road. That takes care of setting up our sort of base state. We have a couple more parts of that base state we need to take care of, because some of the logic is going to relate to how the AI will decide to build units, and we're going to have to actually implement those same features onto the player to create an equitable sort of system. That said, in addition, what we've taken care of is pretty much all the sort of prep work we did in that first video of this section. The other parts of that we had to do for the building. We will have other sort of prep steps that we haven't done in that first video that we'll do along the way, but we'll run into those, and hopefully I'll prep them beforehand as we move through this section. All right, that said, in the next video, what we're going to do is we are going to take care of spawning in the barracks and some rules around creating units. And again, we'll have to implement those rules onto the player as well. This video and this series have been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors, like Tristan, Ludovic, and David. So if you want to be here when that video comes out, make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon. And in addition, if you've liked this video or this series, hit that like button down below. It really does help the channel out. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.